I think that if you can find a new path, that's sometimes more powerful than trying to follow someone else in their footsteps and trying to recreate exactly what they did well. Because I always think, like, even if you can exactly replicate what somebody else did, you likely won't have exactly the same level of success.
Welcome to Happy to See Me, the podcast that puts the spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. I'm Erika Casupanan, the first Canadian to win Survivor. But before that, I was a Filipino immigrant and corporate perfectionist who felt doubted and overlooked. Now I'm here to prove that every journey, whether messy, beautiful, or unexpected, is worth celebrating. Every Monday, I bring you candid conversations and relatable pep talks with guests who've defied expectations. If you're ready to feel seen, celebrated, and empowered, you're in the right place. And here, I'm always happy to see you.
The Dodgers won. Let's start with
Rough room for you, Goldie. Rough room.
Oh, no.
I'm in Toronto. I'm a Blue Jays fan.
Oh, my gosh. Well, my condolences to your team that your team didn't win. It was funny because I took a flight literally during the game. So I was on a flight from LA to New York. And then all of a sudden, the entire airplane exploded with cheers. And I will say this, 1 or 2 boos.
Okay, that's good. Okay, that's probably me.
Does that make you feel better? So I hope that makes you feel better, because there was definitely 1 or 2 boos, which I thought was really funny. And then I was like, I wonder what's I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I totally forgot about this. And then, yes.
Oh, so. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy that you're happy. I am a Jays fan, and it is collective depression. I feel like yesterday it was like the whole country was reeling from a breakup or something. I think it's really fun because we hadn't gone to the World Series in 32 years. And truly, because I travel across Canada a lot for work, and truly over the last month, people from every corner of the country were excited. So I think it was fun to collectively have hope and collectively feel in community.
I love that energy that everybody is collectively behind your specific sports team. I feel like that is such a good positive energy regardless. And I love that when you share that with different people in your country are just like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see them play.
I know. It feels bittersweet. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a Dodgers person. So it feels bittersweet, but it's fine. It's okay. Before I introduce you formally, I feel like I need to point out a very important detail for anyone who is just listening to the audio version of the podcast, because you are also a colored hair girly. So can you describe what your hair looks like to everybody?
Yes, so my hair is currently more like a grass green color. I change it between different shades of green, but right now it's a grass green. It really does whatever shade of green it wants to do. And so right now it's this color. It's about shoulder length green hair. So I'm always really excited to have green hair, but also to meet somebody else who has colored hair. And I think it's really fun when we all look like M&Ms together.
I know. We could hang out and we'll look like the Joker or something.
Yeah, or we look like Skittles or something.
What made you decide to get the green hair?
I've had a billion different hair colors over the years. I've had red, I've had lavender, I've had peach, I've had every single shade of brown, I've had white, gray, blue. And it's funny because I was on the shade of green, and I actually love green. Green is my favorite color. So this was good. It happened when it did. And timing is so wonderful and miraculous sometimes. But I had green hair when I blew up on LinkedIn. So when I blew up on LinkedIn, I created over 800 daily consecutive videos on the platform, which was a very intense time. But I had green hair at the time, so people started using this green heart emoji and other green emojis to represent me on the platform. And then I thought, oh, being a branding person, I was like, oh, this probably means that this is part of my brand. Not saying I can't change it, but just that it was something that people really connected to, which I thought was very sweet.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I mean, I've had this purple hair for years. And then once I was on Survivor, I was like, wait, people really recognize this purple hairstyle. So even though I use it for my own, I use it, even though I have this hair because I personally love it. I'm like, oh yeah, it is part of building the personal brand, right? It is
Yeah.
good to have something that is easily recognizable. I think that in marketing, people would always say if somebody could dress like somebody as a Halloween costume, then you know that they have a
Yes.
recognizable brand.
Yes. Actually, that's funny you should say that. So, the first year I started doing videos, one day I was like sick. It was Halloween. And so I wasn't on LinkedIn, and I was on LinkedIn every single day. And so I just started getting all these texts, and my friends were like, Goldie, you need it on the platform right now. Like, you need to get on the platform right now. And I'm like, no, guys, I'll post my daily video soon. And they're like, no, that's not it. You need to get on the platform and see what happened. And so I was like, okay. So I get on the platform, and at the time, the person who was head of videos actually just dressed up as me. So he put on a green wig, and he put on a green wig, and he made like a little cardboard cutout of like at the time the video frame was like a very specific kind of video frame. So he carried it, he like dressed up as me, and then just wrote like thank you to Goldie Chan and all the other video creators. So I was like the only person that got a shout out, and I was his Halloween costume for the year. That was just pretty wild because I was like genuinely somebody's Halloween costume.
I love that. And I think it definitely shows the impression that you made on the platform and even that your branding is effective, right? This is probably a good time
Yeah,
for me to introduce you to the listeners. And this is the perfect segue
please.
into your bio because I am
Yes.
pumped to speak to you, Goldie Chan. So, Goldie is a creative keynote speaker, author, and cancer survivor. And she was named the Oprah of LinkedIn by Huffington Post. And she's won the LinkedIn Top Voice Award for social media. Goldie founded the award winning social media and creative agency Warm Robots. She is an award winning writer, and her work has been published in places like Ford and the New York Times. And she even writes for Archie Comics, which is incredible. And she just released her new book, Personal Branding for Introverts. Welcome, Goldie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on this podcast with you, Erica. I think it's so funny because everybody always points out the Archie comics, and I love Archie comics. I grew up on Archie comics, so it's so cool to be one of the few regular writers on Archie comics.
I used to read Archie comics all the time as a kid. It must be like such a different headspace to be writing for Archie comics versus when you're creating content for LinkedIn or writing your book, right?
Yes, I think I'm always thinking Team Betty or Team Veronica. I'm currently Team Betty.
Wow. I feel
Yeah.
like I always liked Betty when I was a kid too. I think that Betty seemed more
Yeah.
relatable.
Yeah, Betty's just a sweet one in so many ways, and she's so fun. I will say this, when I was younger, I was Team Veronica. But
Oh.
now that I'm older, I'm actually Team Betty. But yes, I definitely writing between comics and then writing serious nonfiction or more of the marketing branding side of non of fiction is completely different sides of my brain, but it's really fun to write stories, and then it's really fun to write educational content. So I love doing both, truly.
Yeah, yeah. It's clear that you've been able to hone your voice regardless of the platform that you have been writing on over the last couple of years. I do love to start the podcast by asking our guests if there was something that you were happy to see this week. So, what were you happy to see?
Okay, I don't want to say the thing that'll make you upset. So I was happy. So I will say this. This week, I was happy to see some of my friends. So yesterday, I had my first ever book signing and book event here in New York. And so a few of my friends came out for it. So it was so nice to see some of my friends that I haven't seen in a while because I'm not always out here in New York proper. So I was very happy to see them.
Oh, I love that. Oh, it is nice that work and being able to build a brand for yourself opens up these opportunities for you to travel and also connect with people that are not local to you, right? Oh, I love that you got to do that.
Yes, yes. I love the fact that when you're going out and you're speaking, and you do quite a bit of public speaking too, so you absolutely know this. When you're doing public speaking or you're doing events and things like that, it really opens the doors to having friends all over where you live, but also all over the world. And it's so neat that you can visit them. And I remember one time when I was traveling so much, I think I saw my friends in New York and differently in London more than I saw my friends in Los Angeles. So sometimes that also happens when you're traveling a little too much. So that's when I know I need to rein it in a little bit.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, speaking of work travel, what I was happy to see, I
Yes.
got to go to Saskatchewan for the first time. So a province
Oh
in
my gosh,
central
so
Canada.
fun.
I
So
I've been
fun.
fantasizing about it after The Subway by Chappell Roan came out, and she has the lyric about moving to Saskatchewan. But it was such a
Yeah.
cool experience because as part of this conference I was speaking at, which gathered all of these sport hosting professionals, we got to tour the CFL stadium. So it's like Canada's version of the
Whoa.
NFL. And there was this moment where we
Yeah.
got to walk out of the tunnel that the players exit.
And you get into that big
Yes,
opening.
yes, yeah. You walk out into the field, and at the moment we were walking out, the sun was setting
Yeah.
and the sky was colored like cotton candy. And there was
Oh my
something so cool
gosh.
about being on the field, seeing the stands and seeing the
Yeah.
colors. And I was just like, wow, the world is beautiful. And it was so nice to have a moment like that.
It's the moment in the movie when they do a 360 camera around you and you're like looking up at the sky
Yeah.
and the sunlight like catches your face a little bit. That's the hero moment in the movie that you were in.
Exactly, exactly. The hero reached the pinnacle of where they're trying to go. That, or they're having some type of epiphany where they realize something about themselves and they're like, oh my God,
Right. And they're like, oh.
now that I've unlocked this, I can really get to my goal. But
Wait, I have to ask you then, where is your favorite place in the world to visit?
oh, my favorite place in the world to visit. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Ooh, where do I love to go? It's so hard because I think I've gone to so many great places. Maybe
Yeah.
recency bias. I was recently in Amsterdam over the summer.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I love
Love
going to
it.
Amsterdam. I love that there's so much character that they've been able to retain. I love how it's
Yes.
very chill. Like, I like the chill culture. But
Yeah.
I think part of the reason why it means a lot to me is growing up, we didn't really have the opportunity to do a lot of international travel. And when I was in my early
Mm.
20s, the first place that I could travel overseas by myself, where I went backpacking, was Amsterdam. And I still remember the
Mm.
moment where, you know, when you land at the airport, you take the train into the city and you get to the central station in the heart of Amsterdam. And I remember walking out of the station and seeing the canals and the buildings and feeling like I'm in a really different place and feeling the pride of being able to get
Oh,
myself there. So whenever I go to visit Amsterdam, it reminds me of that moment.
it's a symbol of your adulthood.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I always love hearing where people love to visit because I think it always tells you a little bit about themselves or a little bit more about their story. And people will really surprise you with their answers, especially when people pick a teeny tiny
Hmm.
town where they're like, oh, this reminds me of the first time I went on a trip with my partner, or this is the first time that I had this XYZ milestone, which I think it is for you. So like I just like love those answers.
Do you have a favorite place?
Oh gosh, I mean I do love New York where I am right now, but I'll say maybe a milestone place for me would be London. I love London. I love visiting London. I remember that it was one of the first places that I ever got a black car. So like the person that stands with the
Mm,
sign, they have
hmm.
your name on it. And I remember thinking like, "Oh my gosh, I've made it. Like this is so fancy. Like somebody with the sign is coming to pick me up from the airport." And it was like the first time in my adult life that that had happened before.
Oh, that is so. I know. I remember I had that happen to me for the first time, and I'm like, wow, is this how the other people live? Is this what
Yes.
it's like? You're having your celebrity moment. There's nothing quite like it.
Yeah, there's for sure nothing quite like it. Also, just I love how diverse London is. It's so
Hmm.
cool. You kind of have true diversity there, and you have all these different people from different cultures, different areas who mix and mingle there, and it's just cute. Like I love the accents.
I know, I know. I think what I appreciate about London is it's so big,
It's so
and you
big.
could easily spend one trip exploring one pocket of the city, and then you
Yes.
can come back again, go to a totally new part of the city, and it's like
Yes.
you have so many more options for exploring.
Yes. And I love thrifting in London. So that's
Yes.
like one of my favorite things is thrifting in London. because it's been around a little bit longer than the United States, but the thrifting is so good for some of the like really fun offshoot brands. So
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. This podcast, we also love to inspire people who have felt underestimated in some way. So,
yes.
have you ever felt underestimated?
Gosh, I think that there were so many times, especially early in my career, that I felt very underestimated. So when I first started out working, I remember that I would always get, of course, like the most junior position because I was starting out working and I didn't have major connections. So I started out as a marketing assistant and I did that for a couple of years. And I remember thinking, people always assign me whatever they were just like, oh, I don't understand this technology. And so they'd be like, you're the youngest,
Mm,
you get this job, and we don't expect you to necessarily understand it, but good luck, right? Or or they'd be like, oh, this is like a particularly difficult project. We don't want to handle this. So let's just give it to you. And if you do it, it's great. If not, that's fine too. And I remember taking some of these things and tackling them and then doing them so well because I just was so motivated, especially being the youngest person on the team. I really wanted to show people that I could learn, that I could do it on my own. And I always love being first at something. Like I really enjoy being like one of the early people, the pioneer people trying something out. So I remember this happened weirdly with blogs. So ended up getting one of the startups I worked at with like best blog of the year or something like that. And they had just started a blog, period. And so it was like a funny time, but it was definitely a time that I was underestimated and I hopefully proved them a little wrong by kind of thinking outside the box, which I think that's what you need to do when people underestimate you is to think really uniquely.
yes, I agree. I always say when you're underestimated, it's actually an opportunity, right? Because people
Yes,
don't know what to expect from you. So you can actually shape your path and you can shape what you're going to do, anyways. Because if people don't know what to expect from you, why not go for the thing you want to do or
right.
create a new process or do things the way that you see fit for yourself?
Right. I think that if you can find a new path, that's sometimes more powerful than trying to follow someone else in their footsteps and trying to recreate exactly what they did well. Because I always think, like, even if you can exactly replicate what somebody else did, you likely won't have exactly the same level of success. So,
100%. And I think certainly you've been carving your own path with your own personal brand building. And I
right.
want to congratulate you on your book, Personal Branding for Introverts. I
Yay. Oh
have
my
it
gosh. I
here.
love that you have it.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yes, I read it over the last week. And
Yay.
as a lot of the listeners know, I used to work in
Right.
communications, brand marketing for 10 years before I was on reality TV. And I think that what I love about this book is there's a lot of practical tips, whether you identify as an introvert or not. But I do love the tension it creates because you think personal branding, someone who is loud, out
Right.
there, frequently being seen. And then introversion, you think of someone who is likely more reserved. Not to say that's the definition of introversion,
Right.
but what people tend to perceive about introverts. How do you define introversion and extroversion?
So I actually like to think there's so many classical definitions of introversion, some of which I've included in my book, but I like to think about introversion in terms of your battery, your natural battery,
Mm.
right? That you have your energy battery. And I think for introverts, if you're talking to someone super interesting, your battery will still drain over time. Your battery will still slowly go down over time and you'll need to refill it. Versus if you're an extrovert, just very classically, if you're talking to someone interesting that you like, your battery stays very full slash maybe fills up a little bit more because you're having a really good time. But for
Hmm.
introverts, that battery just kind of always naturally goes down. So that's how I classically define introverts versus extroverts.
I really like that description because I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding around introverts and extroverts, right? I think people just
Yes.
assume it's about volume and it's about
Yes.
always requiring attention, but it's really not. As you said, it's about connection with other people and how that affects you.
I do have a small section in my book that's called Loud Introvert with my fabulous friend Chris Doe, who talks in it. And I think loud introverts definitely exist. I think if you ever talk to an introvert who is really excited about something, I think a lot about Archie fans that I meet who are so introverted. But then they meet me and they're like, oh my gosh, I've never met an actual like writer of an Archie comic. And then I'll sign one of their comics and they're just like, oh wow, I can't believe it. This is so cool that you're like here and that we're talking, etc. So I know for a fact that introverts absolutely can be loud. We just have to be doing or talking about something that we are passionate about. And Erika, how would you define yourself? Do you think you're an introvert, extrovert, or ambivert?
So it's interesting because I think that a lot of people who have watched me on TV assume that I'm an introvert, but I actually skew more extroverted. I
Hmm.
think that as you were talking about the battery, if
Yeah.
I am talking to somebody interesting, or even if I go to a party, if I have a good time, I leave and I am jazzed. I am pumped up.
Yeah.
And I think that if I talk to somebody and I find that it might be a bit more draining, then I find the battery goes down. But I find that depending on the people around me, I could have my energy feel a lot better. But I don't think that I'm the most volume loud person. I'm not the
Mm,
person who must be the center of attention all the time. So I think that
right.
sometimes people assume that I'm introverted.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, I that's why I say because people say, "Oh, introverts are tired when they talk to anyone." Untrue. I I like to use the parameter of like introverts get tired even when they talk to someone who's super interesting that they super like because let's be real, even extroverts get super tired when they talk to
Yes.
somebody who is very annoying and nobody wants to talk to them at the party. Like everyone gets tired by that situation. That is not an introvert specific tiring situation.
In the book, I read that you identify as an introvert.
Yeah.
So, how does an introvert become the Oprah of LinkedIn?
So an introvert becomes the an Oprah or the Oprah of LinkedIn by creating over 800 daily consecutive videos. So that's what I did. I went out there and I said, I got into LinkedIn video beta while I was between jobs and I said, okay, I'm just going to do videos for a month before I look for my next like 9 to 5 role, right? And I'm sure especially with your journey you understand how this goes where you're like I'm going to try this new, totally different thing out, but I'm probably going to go back to a 9 to 5, right? Like after this, like I'm going to try this out and like there's a chance I will just return to that. So I said, I'm just going to make a couple of videos and I truly did not expect them to take off. I was just expressing myself in the moment, doing videos on branding marketing, and they really started to take off like a month in and especially 3 months in. So 1 month in, people were starting to talk about the videos I was doing and it was really fun. And I started getting asked to travel just like a little bit. And by 3 months, people were like, can I book you to speak? And as somebody who had never spoken on stages before,
Hmm.
that was a new journey for me. So I was traveling all over the US, all over the world to do public speaking. And I had never really done this before, so I was learning how to do this on the fly. I also started my own agency at the time because I was getting all these clients in the door. So I was kind of building infrastructure. I was building the
Hmm.
building around me while all the things were happening inside. And it was really funny to do that because I think so many people are like, okay, I'm going to build the agency and then the clients will come. I will, figure out what I want to speak on and then I will try to get the speaking gigs. But for me, it was definitely like I was just pumping out so many videos that people kept discovering me and then people kept saying like here's an open door, would you like it? And at the time I was very much like yes, I just want to try this for a while. And my honestly internal thought was like yes, I'm going to try this for a while and then I'm going to go back to working
Hmm.
at the 9 to 5 once this kind of dies down. And then basically for 2.5 years, between 2017 to 2019-ish, 2020-ish, it just like never died down. And so I was very thankful and very lucky that my timing was good, but also my work ethic was good. And I'm sure you get this too. Like some people have the best timing, but they don't put in the work effort. And some people put in the work
Hmm.
effort, but the timing is just like not right. So when the two things meet, it really is magic.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that I totally relate to that experience because I think after I
Yeah,
was on Survivor, people were like, oh, there's a sense of urgency. The window is closing. The next seasons are airing. Now
right.
it's been almost 5 years since my season aired, and I still work, I'm still doing
Yeah.
my thing. And I realized that it's really taking the opportunity that's given to you and then also working hard and building that infrastructure around. And it doesn't really
Yes.
matter the initial window that people give you. I think as long as you have that strategy and that intent and that hard work, you can make it happen.
Yes, and I love that because I think also sometimes the strategy finds you, as I'm sure you've
Mm-hmm.
also discovered too, right? Like, I didn't know anything about public speaking truly until I started doing public speaking. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize that was something you could actually do for a living. And it was really wild to me when I first started doing it that, like, oh, I would meet people and they're like, oh, yeah, I've been on the circuit for years. Like, I've been doing this forever. And then I don't know if you felt this way, but I was like, oh, I'm like the youngest person in the room. I'm the only person with colored hair. I'm like the only
Mm-hmm.
Asian person in the room. And I just like look so different. And my story is like so different than everybody else. And I'm sure, actually, I'm pretty positive you've experienced this too, where it's just like you go in the room, you're so different. And it's honestly a kind of magical moment though, because you can go in and be like, hey, here's how my different experience can teach like a pretty universal learning lesson for everyone or something that's super helpful because I like being very helpful when I can.
Yeah, I totally relate. When I go to conferences, similar to you,
Yeah.
I am the only one who looks like me. I'm probably the only
We
one
need to
with
do
colored
like a
hair.
code keynote together at some
Yeah.
point at a conference. I'm so for this.
Yes, we need to wrangle all of the Asian girls with different colored hair and
Yes.
then make a lineup of all of us
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
and then prove to everybody that we have something to say that is valuable, right?
Yes. Yes, I would love that. And we all have to have different colored hair though. That's my only caveat because we
We need
need
a rainbow.
we need to be like a true rainbow of different hair colors because that would just aesthetically be pleasing. One of the brands that I've started working with is Pantone. So I just
Mhm.
think in terms of colors now sometimes. So I love a good hair color girly.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
See, what I appreciate about you is you haven't strayed from how you want to present yourself and how you want to show
Right.
up in the world, right? I think that as a fellow colored hair girly, we love having colored hair. And then sometimes life maybe could be a bit easier if we didn't have colored hair.
I will say that some people, it's so funny because I'm sure you get this too, but I
Hmm.
get so many people who are like, oh, Goldie, you only blew up on LinkedIn because you had colored hair. And I was like, no, I blew up on LinkedIn despite having
Hmm.
colored hair because so many people told me when I blew up, they're like, you should really dye your hair back to a neutral color. Cause I blew up on, a really conservative platform, like a really
Hmm.
traditional old school platform. And a lot of people, especially actually older Asian women, which is pretty intense if you think about it, reached out to me and they were just like, Goldie, a little bit of good advice. Like, you should really change your hair color back to like your traditional hair color. And I thought that was like fascinating because it was like people within my own culture who were telling me, like, go back to neutral hair. And I just really stubbornly,
Hmm.
I bet you and I have this in common. I really stubbornly was like, no, I'm going to keep this hair now because now you've told me that I shouldn't have this hair. Now I'm going to super stubbornly have this hair.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I find that I have still people who will underestimate me because I look
Yes.
really young, petite, have this hair. So I
Yes.
find it's one of those things where initially people might look at me kind of confused, like, what does she have to
Yeah.
say? But then it crosses over, and then people are like, wait, we love the idea of this young person with vibrant hair being
Yes.
here. So it's one of those
Yes.
things where initially people don't understand it. But then if you keep going, then people can embrace it.
Yes, and I think also part of it is, I was on this other podcast with, I don't know if you know what Second City is, but
Yes, I love
yeah.
Second
Okay,
City.
great. I just always want to disclaim that. So for the audience that's listening that may not know what Second City is, they're a great school that teaches improv to students. And so it's like a great comedy school, basically. And I was on their podcast and we talked about charisma. And I think that charisma is something, of course, some people just innately have it and are just really shining stars and we love them. But I think that sometimes charisma is your likability. Like
Hmm.
sometimes charisma is you show up in the room and you are just the max likable version of yourself. And that's nothing fake. It's just you being honest and true and of course an overused word is authentic. But showing up and being like a very genuine version of yourself can in so many ways be natural charisma. And I'm sure we've all been around naturally charismatic people who just are truly themselves and they aren't trying hard. That's just the most charismatic thing that they could be.
I love that you brought that up because this relates to one of my favorite quotes from the book, which is personal branding is not about changing our essence. It's about embracing your true self and letting others see it too. So, can you share more about what this means?
Yes. So, one of the things that I really have been telling people, especially in person who are just starting to discover my book, is I don't want to write this book for introverts to become extroverts, right? Because that's a totally different book. And honestly, there's many books out there on the marketplace that describe that are written by extroverts and that are maybe little bit more clinical. I want a book that feels easy for introverts to read and that is really so introverts feel comfortable being introverts. And I think that embracing your true essence to me means finding what your introvert superpowers are and embracing those and then living through that truth. And I think that that is the most powerful thing you can do. And I've actually had some extroverts start to read my book too and say, like, oh, this is super helpful for me too. And I'm so happy to hear that because I really want, in an ideal universe, I would love everybody to find out what their personal superpowers are, embrace those, and be really present in the world as you are. Because I think we live in such a tiring, overwhelming time that if you can figure out who you are and you don't have to present yourself quite with so much masking, which I think
Hmm.
a lot of us do naturally, I think it becomes a less tiring world and existence for you to have.
Yeah, I really appreciate you using the language masking, right? Because
Yeah.
I think when people think of personal brand, they think of what influencers or entrepreneurs or people who are big online have to
Yeah.
do. And they have to put on this mask to show up so everybody knows what their niche is or everybody knows what their expertise is. For you, what is personal branding and what is personal branding not?
Yes. So I like to define personal branding in terms of a common question I get, which is what is personal branding versus reputation? So, reputation to me is the story people tell about you when you're not in the room. And personal branding is the story that you share when you are in the room. And the room can be virtual, the room can be in person. So, personal branding is the ability to share your own story and curate your own story that you want to share. And of course, this relates to your career and the job prospects that you have, or maybe even climbing up the corporate ladder if you're internal. It's so helpful to think about personal branding in that way. And I want to add on too that all of us, regardless of if we were on Survivor or not, we all have personal
Hmm.
brands now in this day and age because pretty much all of us have social media. And so if we're not thoughtful about the way we present ourselves online, I know people who have lost job offers because they weren't thoughtful about what they say posted on Instagram. And so they posted things that were inappropriate for that job role. And HR found it and then they would rescind the job offer. So that's wild to me.
Yeah, it's incredibly practical, right? Professionally, to make sure that you have the reputation, you have the credibility to get the
Yes.
job you want, as you said. Even personally, I think that a lot of people think that, oh, I'm just a regular person. I don't need a
Yes.
personal brand. But I think that if anyone has ever texted you and said, hey, I thought of you, and they sent you a link to something, then you have a personal brand because somehow you have
Yes.
communicated to somebody what you would be interested in.
Yes. And I love that example because you were on somebody's mind as they connected two dots, right? They connected you, your name, and you as a person, and they connected an opportunity. And that I think is the most powerful part of personal branding, which is personal branding open doors for you. So if you're an introvert or even extrovert that doesn't want to do that extra work, it can open doors that you didn't even know existed. For me, it opened speaking doors that I didn't know existed. And I wrote for Forbes for quite a few years. And I got that opportunity because Forbes discovered me and asked me if I wanted to write a column. And this was not even an opportunity, I'm quite honest, that I thought was open to me or I thought that I could get. And the opportunity presented itself because my personal brand was so strong in a hyper specific area.
I love it. I love it. So I know that there's the conflict and the tension with building a personal brand between knowing that a personal brand is probably a good thing to have
Right.
and feeling the ick from self promotion. How can someone get over this aversion to self promotion?
Yeah, I love that you said ick of self-promotion. I was talking with somebody else and I called it ick mountain. You need to like overcome ick mountain for the mountain climbers listening, I guess. The way I think about it is you need to be smart and stupid. And let me explain that. So, you need to be smart in terms of everything you do to get to the edge of the cliff. Like, if you have goals with your career, you want to get a certain kind of job, you need to be so smart about doing that research, doing that work, getting prepared, getting ready. I'm not a physical person, but I imagine getting ready for Survivor, you probably have to do quite a bit of physical work to get ready for it because you have to survive in Survivor. So you have to do all this preparation to get to the edge of the cliff. That's the smart part. All
Mhm.
right. But let's get into the stupid part. So, and that's when we kind of jump over the cliff or we climb Ick Mountain, right? We start to
Mhm.
like climb over Ick Mountain. And the stupid part is really having a leap of faith that whatever happens, it was worth the leap of faith, right?
Mhm.
It was worth trying. And I think there's so many quotes out there by so many famous people throughout so many centuries of life that are just like, oh, you know, trying is worth it, etc. There's so many different quotes out there because if you try jumping off the cliff of opportunity and see what happens, you will be so surprised by what small and big doors that opens, or sometimes by how that failure teaches you something about yourself that you didn't know. And I think that that's so powerful. So those are the two words that I love. I'm loving this week in particular to pair together, which is for my 50th podcast, which is smart and stupid. So I think if you can be smart up to the point of being stupid, that helps you get over Ick Mountain because
Mhm.
when you are at that point of making the actual commitment to do the thing, reach out to the recruiter, try upskilling your career skills, trying to learn something new. I think it takes a little bit of stupidity to do that. It takes a little bit of a leap of faith.
Yes, I love that you said that there's a risk involved, right?
Yes.
And think about your journey, right?
Yeah.
When you're on the way to becoming the Oprah of LinkedIn and you are consistently posting video content, did you think 100% of your videos were incredible and that you knew that you were making high quality content and that everybody was going to love it?
So one of my friends has a book out that's delightful called The Good Enough Job. And I thought back then all the time, like these videos just need to be good enough because I was cycling through them and I was shooting and I was editing them all myself. Right. So it was 100% on me. And if you've ever done daily videos, you know, oh my gosh, like it is so much work, even if the video is incredibly simple. So I remember just doing a ton of work every single day. And it was just like taking that leap of faith and being like, okay, this video doesn't need to be perfect. I have another opportunity tomorrow to do that. And I think there's another term that I want to bring up, which I'm sure anyone who comes from immigrant families knows, which is perfectionism because you want to be you want things to be perfect. And I think prior to doing the 800 videos, I was much more of a type A perfectionist, and now I've let that go so much because you cannot do 800 daily consecutive videos unless you have a massive team doing those videos for you, which I didn't have. It was just me. So because it was just me, I couldn't live that perfectionist life. It just had to be what it was. It had to be imperfect content that I was kind of releasing out into the beautiful wild. So that was my journey with the videos, which is day to day. Always thought tomorrow is a new day where if I want to improve, I can improve tomorrow. And today we just need to get that video out.
Totally, totally. I think that once you get over thinking of the results, right? Thinking that
Right.
this needs to get this many likes, this many views, and realizing that the journey is more about the investment in yourself and proving to yourself that
Yes.
I care enough about my goals and I believe that I'm worthy about what I want, that I will just keep pushing anyways. I think that that's
Yes.
actually the big win. And then being called
Yes.
Oprah of LinkedIn is the bonus you probably never anticipated.
No, that was wild. Yeah. So when Huffington Post called me the Oprah of LinkedIn, I just was like, first of all, I say that very with tongue in cheek because it's so silly, right?
Yeah.
It's so silly. But at the same time, it is in my bio because people love it. People love the
Mhm.
silliness of it. And it's really easy when I tell people I'm the Oprah of LinkedIn. People are like, oh, there's something that clicks in people's heads when they
Mhm.
hear that phrase. And I love that that clicks in people's heads. So I'm always such a fan of what is the simplest and clearest way to communicate your story. And even if, of course, you have so many different facets to you, right? Everyone has 20 million different things that they do and that they're comprised of. But sometimes it's the most helpful thing to open a conversation because we always want to be in conversation with other people. It's so wonderful to open a conversation with one small starting point.
Yes, yes. And I really appreciate you saying that people understand Oprah and LinkedIn and how it just clicks because that also says something about the brand that Oprah has built for herself that you can
Yes.
compare yourself to her and everyone is like, yep, 100% I
I mean,
understand.
I think that Oprah was and is so brilliant, and how she handled her first show makes me so happy. So I don't know if you know this, but a little known story about Oprah is that on her first show, she really advocated for all the women on her show to be equally paid with men. So all the women who work
Love
behind the
it.
camera, and I love it. Of course I love it, right? And she did this in the early days when that just wasn't the case. And she really wanted people to be treated fairly behind the scenes of her first talk show. And I just love that about her. And I think that the giveaways is more what she's classically known for. But I think her treating people behind the scenes really well is what she's known for by her teams that she works with. And I hope to curate that reputation, right?
Yeah, and I think that that's an important point, right? People
Yeah,
might know the flashiness of the giveaways, but it's
right.
even the things that you do behind the scenes, the little decisions you make that
Yes.
contribute to the personal brand. And something that I really appreciated about your book, because I've read so many marketing, self help type books, but I
Yes.
really liked the practical advice that you gave because I think a lot of it
Thank you.
was really actionable. So, can you share a tip for personal brand building online and a tip for offline personal brand building?
Absolutely. So, a tip for building your personal brand online, if you are not already on LinkedIn, I know it's uncool. You know, my other nickname is actually the Queen of Uncool, so I'll throw that out there. But if you're not already on LinkedIn, I highly suggest you get on there because I'll say this, a very uncool thing is that LinkedIn has great SEO. So, if you have a LinkedIn profile and you're curating that story like we talked about, you will show up in search results with the right story that you've picked, right? And you'll start to show up in more places online. Now, offline, if I can give a very gentle suggestion. So, for those of us out there, it's conference season. I know I've been to a lot of conferences. One of the things that I try to do, especially as an introvert, when I feel overwhelmed at conferences, is I don't try to meet 30 million people at a conference. I truly try to meet between 2 to 3 people at a conference. And if it's a multi-day conference, maybe that's 1 to 2 people a day. But I try to have an in-depth conversation with 2 to 3 people over the course of a conference. And very purposely, that's so it doesn't drain my energy. And also, that deeper connection is what introverts are so good at. And also, it's just so helpful because you remember more about those people. Because I've definitely remember the first couple conferences I went to, especially when I was younger, and I'd come back with like the stack, like thick stack
Mm.
of business cards. And I'd be like, I'm going to look through these. I'm going to categorize them. And just for me and like the way my brain works, that 100% didn't happen. So I like to make things easier for myself by saying, I will try to remember 2 or 3 people because I will genuinely remember those 2 to 3 people.
Yes, I like that because you are really taking your skills that you naturally have. So, in your
Right.
case, as an introvert, the deep connection and then working those to your advantage. There is not one way to be successful at building a personal brand.
No, absolutely. And I think it's really about finding what works for you as
Hmm.
as an introvert or an extrovert. Like I think it's helpful to figure out, okay, well, when I go to a conference, I feel particularly drained by like this activity. So maybe I'll try to do less of that activity or like very narrowly define and say, I will do that activity for exactly an hour. Like the other thing that I love to do, and I learned this from my partner, is I will set a timer when I'm at a party and I will say, okay, I'm going to leave in X amount of time. That way I have like a beginning and an end time. And if
Hmm.
I feel like at the end of that end time, I'm really having a good time, then I'll stay past that. But it just gives me a natural out.
Yeah, it's so funny. I do something similar. If I know I have to leave a party at a certain time, I set an
Right.
alarm. But I find it's because once I get to the party, I usually end up chatting with whoever, and then I'm like, "Wait, I'll stay an extra 2 hours longer." So sometimes I'm like, "No, Erica, you have to leave at this time. Get
Erika,
out."
this is 100% how I know you're an extrovert. And I
Yeah.
love this for you because I love that every single introvert I've talked to has been like, oh my gosh, I love that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave the party early. like,
Yeah.
I love that. And then every extrovert I've talked to has been like, but why would you do that? It's so fun to go to parties with friends and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I love that.
Yeah. I know we do the same thing, but for different reasons. But as we were saying, we are figuring out what works for us. So
Yes.
that's like the main
And of
takeaway.
course everything is a scale, right? There's
Hmm.
introverts on one end and extroverts on the other, and everyone exists on the scale of introversion to extroversion. And some people define themselves as extroverted introverts and some people define themselves as introverted extroverts, and there's new terms out there every single day, but I just think it's a spectrum, and
Hmm.
wherever you fall on this delightful introvert to extrovert spectrum, find out what works for you and what is healthy for you.
Yes. You don't even have to choose one of them. You could
No.
just like not choose anything and just figure out how you want to create your own path. So,
Yes,
totally in your
exactly.
court. And I know you briefly mentioned this, but I want to circle back because I do want to congratulate you. And I also feel like this is an honor that this is your 50th podcast interview for this book. So thank you for sharing that milestone with me.
Oh my gosh, Erica, I am so excited that I get to share this milestone on your podcast with
Yay!
you. Yay! 50 is so many. It's funny because I thought I had done quite a few, and then I went back and I tallied them up, I think a week before we were going to meet. And then I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be exactly 50 when I
Oh,
talked to
I love
Erica. And I was like,
it.
I love this timing, but also 50 is so much. And I will say this as an introvert, that battery drains even when I'm talking to interesting people. I think it's 50 over the course of 3 months, which is a lot.
Wow, that's a
Yeah,
lot.
that's a lot. And I'm sure you know because you run a podcast, which is so much work. So for everyone listening, I hope that you go like and subscribe and leave a review for Erica's podcast on all of the platforms it's listed on, because that helps this amazing podcast that you're listening to get to more listeners and viewers.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I did not pay Goldie to say that, by the way. That is
And
out
I'm
of the goodness
taking
of
like the
Goldie's heart.
$50 underneath the name. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Erica didn't pay me to say that. But, I know personally now that I've been guesting on all of these podcasts, and I don't have a podcast myself, but it takes so much work to run a podcast, to edit a podcast, to put it out there in the universe. So even if there's one amazing listener listening out to this interview right now, please make sure to leave a review for the podcast because it truly it truly, truly helps. And it's also nice. Like if you leave a nice review, I'm sure that it's nice to hear that, right, Erika?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, actually funny story because I'm in Canada, so I can see the
Yeah.
reviews from the Canadian Apple Store. But
Oh
then I
my gosh.
recently had a meeting with my podcast network and they were like, "Did you know that there's reviews from other countries fully?" I'm like, "What? I couldn't see that." They were reading me all these reviews and honestly, thank you to everybody who has taken the time to do that. It truly does mean a lot because as you said, it's a lot of work.
Yes.
I put a lot of care in trying to find guests who can shine and also who can inspire. So I do appreciate anytime anyone takes a moment to do that. So
Yes, and
thank
I
you.
love the international reviews. That's so cool. And you will be getting an American review because I can't access the Canadian side. So you'll be getting an American review from me for sure.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, in celebration of your 50th episode or your 50th podcast interview,
Yay.
before we wrap, do you have any outstanding advice for the person listening who probably knows they should build a personal brand but feels so awkward about it?
I always say start with one. I think that the most overwhelming thing that you can do whenever you start on any new journey, especially with branding and marketing, is to say, here's this massive goal. I'm going to do 20 steps today. Start with one. So, for the listeners out there, here's some homework. Maybe this means reaching out to one old colleague that you love to reconnect with. Maybe that means following one new interesting person in your industry vertical or who does something that you'd love to learn more about. Maybe that's attending one local event or group that's in your city, right? Hyper specifically, it needs to be in your city. Maybe it's one of any of those actions. And what's so powerful is if you can repeat one action once a week or once a month, your life will begin to change.
Yes, it is so attainable. Thank you so much for making us all believe that it's something that we can all
Yes.
do.
Yes.
Goldie, if people want to keep up with you, if they want to check out your new book, where can they do that?
So you can always find me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Goldie. You can also find me on my personal website, goldiechan.com/book.
Oh, Goldie, thank you so much for spending this milestone interview with me and for sharing your
Yay!
wisdom. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much for having me, Erika.
And thank you to everybody listening. I always love that you are willing to spend a bit of time with me this week, and I will be happy to see you next Monday.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Sonar Network.